Welcome to week 5, everyone. It's hard to believe, but we're a third of the way through the semester already. And so we're going to switch gears this week, and we're going to put the wraps on our resumes and cover letters. And I hope that everything we've done along the way has really given you a new perspective on what a resume and cover letter can look like, should look like, and ought to look like. And I hope that some of the tips that I've given you and tools that I've provided for you will be things that you can use in the future. You know, one of the things that I really concern myself with in this class is obviously I want you to perform well on the assignments that we do in our 15 weeks together, but what's more important to me is that the skills that we use in class have legs after the class, so that in 2 or 3 years, 5, 10 years down the road, you can apply them to a writing task or writing situation. One of those tools is CRAP. Which you all had an opportunity to learn about through a video and then apply to a couple of resumes. And I can't stress enough how important that tool is, and I hope that you use it throughout the semester. It's actually one of the things that I think of when I begin any writing task. It's how am I going to break this up? Where am I going to put things? How am I going to draw the reader's attention to various elements in the document? And so it's a really great place and a really great way to start with any writing task because it gets you thinking about how you want your reader to interact with your information, and that's really critically important. So this coming week, like I said, we're going to put the wraps on our resume and cover letters. You're going to turn those in. I'm going to grade those, get those back to you. Remember, if you're not satisfied with your grade, you are more than welcome to revise those and resubmit those for a higher grade. I just ask that you do so within a week's time. And we're really going to move into, instead of writing about ourselves now, we're going to write about things in the world. And that's important because, as I say in various places this week, you all are here learning a new set of knowledge and you're becoming experts. And with that expertise comes a new language. And that language needs to be accessible to other people, not just experts. And so what that means is you have to be able to talk about tools, equipment, techniques, problems in ways that a normal or lay person can understand. And I see this every day. My wife's a veterinarian, and one of the things that she has to do often is she has to communicate diagnoses, so diseases and issues, treatments and therapies, and really complex things to an audience of people who don't have the same training as her. And so, and that goes a long way in determining how successful she is at her job. If she goes in there and just starts rambling off medical jargon, it's not going to get her very far, and her clients are likely to feel kind of alienated. And so that's true if you're installing a heat pump in somebody's home, if you're talking to a patient in a hospital setting, if you're working on a project, and sometimes it's not even that we're working with a customer or client. Sometimes it's just that we're working with somebody in a different department. So, one of the things that I have to deal with as an instructor of writing and of English is that sometimes I have to communicate with other people on campus who don't have the same knowledge that I do and don't have the same training, and I have to be able to articulate my goals and my information to them in a way that they're going to be able to understand. So we're going to do that in fundamentally 2 ways, and we're going to sort of take it step by step. The first thing I want you to learn how to do is just to be able to define unfamiliar terms. And there are so many unfamiliar terms in the world. If you think about it, we're all part of what we might call a discourse community, and that is a group of people that fundamentally share the same language. And we don't just see this in work. We see this sometimes in other aspects of our life. For instance, I'm a big fly fisherman. And so if you happen to walk by me and my buddy Dan talking about fly fishing, you might think that we're talking a whole different language. If we're talking about different techniques for fishing, tight line nymphing, or if we're talking about different flies, the gray ghost, or if we're talking about different types of water, oh, that's soft water, or those are nice riffles. That's not language that everybody has access to or that everybody understands. And so if I were trying to teach somebody the art of fly fishing, I'd have to back that language off a little bit and have to redefine certain terms. And so that's the first thing that we're going to do this week is I'm going to ask you to find 5 terms from either your career or from a hobby of yours, and I'm just going to ask you to define those. And you're going to have 2 sets of readings, one a handout that I've produced and one a handout that's super helpful, and you're going to practice writing what is called a formal definition. And a formal definition isn't called that because it wears a black tie, although that is a good joke. It's called that because it follows a formula, and that formula is really helpful because it gives you something to fall back on. It goes back to what I just said. I don't want you to have to reinvent the wheel every time you begin writing something, and so having a formula, like a formal definition, gives you a pattern that you can follow. And fundamentally, what that pattern is it's the term itself, it's the class that term falls into, and then it's the distinguishing characteristics. And you'll see that on the handout, the example that I give you is basal cell carcinoma. Okay? Now, for some audiences, you might be able to get away with just saying basal cell carcinoma is a type of skin cancer, and that's all they need to know. But in some cases, you need to give the audience a little bit more information, in which case you can use that formal definition, and you might say something on the order of basal cell carcinoma, the term, is a type of skin cancer, the class, and then you provide distinguishing characteristics, things that make basal cell carcinoma different from things in that same class. So how is basal cell carcinoma different than other skin cancers? So how is it different, for example, from squamous cell or from melanoma? Well, for one thing, it's the most treatable and most common form of cancer in the world. So you might give that as a distinguishing characteristic. You might also talk about the types of cells that it affects. But fundamentally what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a level of difference between that term and things that are like it. So I think you're going to have fun doing this. It's always an interesting exercise. I get to learn a bunch of new words. So basically choose a word that somebody not in your field or not in your discourse community wouldn't be familiar with. And again, if you're having trouble with picking terms from your career, you're more than welcome to use terms from a hobby. And that's always fun too. In one class, we got the opportunity to talk about Swedish pimples and whisker biscuits, and I'll let you look those things up. They have to do with hunting and fishing. And so then after that, once we sort of get our minds wrapped around how to deal with complicated, complex, technical language, then we're going to put this into a new form of writing, and that form of writing is a technical review. And in this case, I'm just going to have you review a product with which you've had experience in recent memory. And so what this is going to get us to do is it's going to get us not only practicing writing about things, you're going to have to write about a tool, maybe a drill or maybe a new fly rod, but you're going to have to do so in a way that's accessible and understandable to a wide audience. When you write this, I want you to imagine somebody who doesn't exactly have the same level of expertise that you do. And to do this, you're going to have to think really carefully about what criteria you're going to use to evaluate that particular product. And then you're going to have to think about the evidence that you have to help you evaluate that product. And so I think that you'll find that this is an interesting type of writing. It's going to force us to be really careful with our language. We can't be too technical. We can't get bogged down in specifications and engineering lingo and those types of things. It's also going to force us to connect claims to evidence. So if I tell you that the Beats headphones are the best sounding headphones ever, I better give you some evidence as to why I think that is. Sometimes it is specifications. Maybe it has some type of proprietary technology, but in other cases it might, you might be able to reference particular aspects of the sound. Oh, it gives a tremendous thumpy bass or whatever. I don't even know what that means, but you can imagine. And so we're going to work on writing a review. And so it's going to force us to practice many of the things that we've been working on. You're going to have to think about organization. You're going to have to think about claims and evidence. You're going to have to think about show, don't tell. And it's also going to give you very valuable practice in how to evaluate something. And evaluating things, sometimes people, sometimes locations, sometimes properties, sometimes tools, pieces of equipment, techniques. Evaluating things is something we do often in the workplace. And so, I want you to do it. I want you to evaluate something that's near and dear to you, something that you have familiarity with, and something that you'll find interesting to write about. And so you'll have an opportunity to read a sample review and maybe get some ideas from that. I'm not endorsing that review as being the greatest review ever, so I'll be interested to hear what you think about it and what you notice the writer doing. But that's fundamentally what we're up to this week, okay? So we're going to finish our resume and cover letter. We're going to practice working with jargon or unfamiliar language. We're going to try to make our language more accessible to other people. And then we're going to culminate the week by writing a draft of a technical review. And again, pick something that you're interested in. Pick something that you have experience with. I find that this is a really fun assignment, not only for me to read, but also for students to write, because you get to write about something and evaluate it. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to contact me. Otherwise, like I said in my week 5 introductory email, this seems like a lot of work, and it is. But once you get started on it, it's really not that bad. And I think that there's a lot of important learning that happens this week that will be fundamental going forward in the class. So, for instance, your next assignment after the technical review is to write a set of instructions. Well, you can't write a good set of instructions unless you can write about things, unless you can avoid jargon, unless you can explain things very clearly and very accessibly with language. So all of this stuff sort of culminates onto one another, and don't forget crap, okay? So be looking for my grades on your resumes and cover letters within a week after I receive those. And otherwise, just keep up the good work. I've been really impressed with the caliber of work. Your reflections have been really thoughtful and really specific. For the most part, the feedback that happened in the feedback forum was great also. I really think that it showed that most people spent a considerable amount of time reading their partner's work and giving substantive feedback, and that doesn't always happen, so I'm really appreciative of that, and we'll do that again in the future. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to text, call, or email. Otherwise, enjoy week 5, and I'll check in later.